Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Go Big with Micha. Today, I'm super excited to be talking with Ari K. I tried the last name and I was told to not bother because I did not get it right. I'm super sorry. But we are going to talk about personal branding. This is one of my favorite topics to discuss, and I'm very excited to talk about it with Ari today. Welcome.
Hi, Mika.
And
Thank you for having me here today. It's okay though. I know a lot of
absolutely.
people either butcher my last name, right? Or, they just can't pronounce it. It took me 5 years to pronounce it correctly. So
Okay.
you are excused from that.
Okay. I appreciate it. So before we dive in, I wanted to tell all of you who may be seeing this live that that you welcome to ask questions right away, and we will answer those. But for some reason, I don't see us going live on LinkedIn.
Oh, no.
Let me check that. It says we're streaming. I just can't see it in the event. So if we don't get any questions, we know why, because then I'll share it afterwards.
Okay.
But yep, but sometimes I can't see it to go. Oh, there we are. There we are. All good. Okay, people. If you see it, ask your questions right away. If you see the replay, feel free to reach out to either Ari or me. We both you have the contact information below the event. I'll share that again. All especially for Ari, you will find all that also when I post the replay. Okay, we are all set. We're streaming and we're diving in. Before uh, I'll ask my first question, let me introduce Ari. She is the CEO and head of strategy at Chykalophia. That's also a difficult name. And helps femtech, DTC, and women-led brands transform their website into a platform that unlocks business opportunities. That is something I'm very interested in. She is the co-author of the top three bestseller books in web design, Made to Sell, Creating Websites That Convert, and we'll hear more about that a little later. She serves as a branding UX consultant and professional peer to support fellow female entrepreneurs through the number one ranked private business incubator in the world. That's 1871 Chicago and Chicago's global healthcare startup incubator, Matter. She's the co-host of Halo Femtech podcast, a podcast that honors disruptive innovators and change makers advancing women's health. Yay to that. Furthermore, she helps women in tech and design break into the industry and succeeds in it by mentoring them for personal branding, career advancement, and entrepreneurship through Interaction Design Foundation, Chicago Innovation, and ADP List. Welcome, Ari.
Thank you for having me. Oh goodness. That's quite a long list of things, right? Thank you for reading
Yeah,
all of that.
yeah.
But man,
Of
I'm
course
excited to
I
dive in into
am.
this particular topic today, Mika. So
Yeah.
yeah, fire up your question.
Yeah. So tell me first, what is your definition of confidence and how does personal branding figure into that?
Oh my.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
a
that
big one
that
right away.
yeah, that's like straight shooting in. Before I maybe answer that, it might work to just kind of look at my background, right? I started off as a graphic designer, and of course, branding is one of the things I learned from school, right? At art
Mhm.
school and all into my professional career. But it didn't really click to me until I built a company with my husband. So when I was, doing, my earlier career, I'm a graphic designer and then move on quickly into a freelance in digital space, doing a lot of website design, user experience design, those kind of things. But my husband, he is a master in computer science and he's been doing web development for so long. He finally come up to me and says, "Hey Ari, do you want to build a business with me?" And I was like, "Sure, what could go wrong?" Right? But
Oh,
there's
yeah, I love that. I love that.
a
Yeah. With your
lot of things
spouse.
could go
Yes.
wrong. Yes.
What could go wrong?
But I mean, honestly, over the years, it is quite an interesting journey because it teach me how to really lean in into my strength
Yeah.
not just as a business owner, but also as a person in crafting this personal brand that we're going to discuss more about. Right
Yeah.
now, from the past 12 years, in terms of building a personal brand, I think you're gonna find your way in a space where you're trying to understand, like, who am I really? How do people perceive who I am? Is that statement true? Right? What are they
Hmm.
saying in the room if I'm not in the room? Right? And who's advocating for me and can really, become the champion for my personal brand? So there's so many different ways for you to really start and figuring out how do you define your personal brand. The biggest thing that stuck with me in my process of finding my own personal brand and crafting that was trying to understand, like, who am I and what my purpose is, right?
Hmm.
A lot of the time people I talk to, they can't really figure out, I don't know what I'm meant to be or what I'm meant to do in this world. And that is not a question that, random brand strategist or personal coach can really answer for you, because you hold the key answer to it. What I can tell you is that if you be, you know, willing, right? If you're willing to really just like be open in terms of really learning who you are and make peace with your past, that's the biggest step that you can do today to really start honing in who you are as a person and how do you craft your own personal brand. So to answer your question,
Hmm.
Mika, about like the confidence in personal branding, we often see all the different inspiration online, right? Be it here on LinkedIn or maybe on other social media channels. You see the different faces or maybe friends or your colleagues or your peers in the industry having great successes on a lot of different things. And this happens to me, right? I sometimes feel very envious, like, oh my gosh, they
Hmm.
already have gone to, such a high place. I'm still down here. We constantly trying to compare ourselves. And
Yeah.
when I caught myself in that moment, I realized that my success is not their success. So my success may not look exactly like what I'm seeing from my own feed, right? So by defining your own success, it really help you focus in what it is that truly is important for you and how you're finding, the different activities around that to support what you do as a person. And thus, being seen as the person doing X in whatever industry you are, be it in tech, be it in, education or healthcare, they'll see you as that person because you craft craftily, well, not craftily, slowly crafting your
Hmm.
personal brand so that you can be seen as something specific, right? So again, coming back into being a confidence, you own it. You don't
Yeah.
have to look elsewhere for really successful people. Sure, you can maybe look at them here and there as an inspiration, but when it starts becoming toxic for you, you got to
Hmm.
stop and really ask yourself, like, is this what I want? Or what does it take to get there realistically
Right.
for you?
Right. I mean, we all slip into that comparison culture thing, right? Even though we know it's not healthy. And one trick I apply when that happens with me, like with people I actually know or I've been following a lot, people I could compare myself to, I go to Michelle Obama
Yeah.
because that's out there. She's a great role model. And then I'm not personally envious,
Yeah.
right? So I'll just take it to that level. I'm like, okay, that's a different story. And then I get out of that envy thing and just see something that impresses me and inspires me. So maybe you that is something that helps me get out of that. You hear me there, like how many followers do you have on LinkedIn uh, type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really I think this external success is a huge issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it drives so much of it influences so much of what we do, and um, getting away from that takes time.
Yeah.
And also there's still, let's say, if you are in corporate, there are certain criteria, external success criteria you need to meet, right? Or as a startup founder, femtech is your
Yeah.
field. Um, there are for sure certain metrics you need to meet and certain expectations of investors you need to meet.
Yeah.
Um, how can you navigate that? Because that always pulls us into those external criteria that are not super helpful for personal branding.
Okay. Each of us have goals, right? And if you're building a business, you run your own, company, or you are, the leader in your current organization, it can be challenging trying to really align your own personal values, your personal brand, along with, well, the corporation values and the corporation goals. How do you figure that out, right? How do you
Mm-hmm.
go along with it, or create some alignment with it? For me specifically, with my own company, Chykalophia, a lot of time my passion is in my business, right? And I think the main
Mm-hmm.
reason why a lot of us, those who are, building your own company, you're super passionate about what you're building, because you know the impact that it's going to have. Now, metrics will help us really trying to figure out like how much impact we'll be able to create, and how much can we really, leverage, so that we can continue building the company, as well as like scaling it, all the way to higher goals that we wanted to, of course, like helping us to really report to investors if you have investors, right? Or just to really help building that culture as well for your internal team. But there's gotta be some alignment with your personal brand, simply because you are the core person from the company, right? You are either the
Yeah.
founder, co-founders, or partners from that particular company. And automatically your values is sip into your personal and your business brand, right? You can't avoid it, because you're behind the brand, or you actually is the leader for that
Yeah.
particular organization. But tying it back into, the goals of the company, to me, I feel like if you're doing what you really feel aligned to do as your own personal brand and with your business, I think goals is just a matter of numbers and trying to hit
Mm-hmm.
numbers, right? Because at the end of the day, we are all brands trying to build our company or our organization. And the biggest thing that we need to do is to create customers, right? When we connect with
Yeah.
customers, and then, have them really um, embark in a journey of being an advocate for us, become, trust, they build trust with us and build community from, be in our brand together in their either communities, or even their own inner circle of friends and families. So for me, again, it's gonna tie back in terms of like having that growth alongside with your customers, or at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, your community. And you'll hit that number simply because you are being true to your own self with your personal brand and your business values. So not entirely sure if that really answered your question though, but happy to, elaborate more on that.
Yeah, no, no, it totally does. So let's say someone is a new entrepreneur or joins a new company.
Mm,
That's when you have a lot of leeway
yeah.
to be deliberate about your personal brand, because there's a lot of new exposure.
Yeah.
You can pivot, reinvent yourself. Or maybe if someone who's watching this is very young and hasn't really thought about the personal branding yet, uh,
Hmm.
how do you get started, or how do you start a pivot if you
Mm,
feel like you're not really branded in a way that supports your goals?
yeah. I think your question has two side of things there. So the first one, if you're building a company and you are, let's just say, either your founders or the leaders in an organization, and you have your own personal brand, or you may not have it completely figured out, right? And then for
Mm-hmm.
those who are, maybe straight out of college trying to figure out how do I build up my personal brand so that people can see me as, somebody specific in a specific field with specific expertise, and then landing that job in a company. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Right. So let's maybe tackle one at a time. So for the leader and the organization, or even, a founder, let's say that, oftentimes when you build your company, you have these different values that it actually comes from your own values. For example, I'm really big in helping, woman-led brands, because that's one of the big key values for me in life, just to really help more women thrive, right? So
Yeah,
often
that's
it's
where we connected. Yeah,
yes,
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
and that's
women.
how
Yeah.
it slipped into the company's
Hmm.
brand values, right? So for you, as the, whether you are the face of the company or you are actually leading multiple teams in an organization, having a strong personal brand really helps build the culture around your
Hmm.
organization, right? So think about it, like, what is it that you value the most? You can start with two simple questions, right? Number one, what do you stand for? And number
Hmm.
two is the question of, what are you against? If some of these values are aligned with your company or your organization, you're good. That's a really good place to start, about like really developing, what truly is meaningful for you. And then you can project that in your day-to-day activities, when you talk with your team, when you're reviewing your team, or even presenting your company outside of the ecosystem of your inner circle, right? And I felt like that's how we get started. But if you don't have those, key values yet figured out, you're gonna be confused, because you don't have this clarity in terms of like,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know what I like, I don't know what I don't like, I don't even know, what I stand for, because you just gonna be in this, circle of wave, just trying to, keep circling, and then not be able to define something for you, nor even, your organization and your internal team. So I think it can be a bit dangerous there, when a manager, or even like, a leader in a specific organization, don't really have a refined personal brand,
Hmm.
because they're not able to really help build up that culture, so that,
Yep.
the team can continuously learn from them and see them as the, role model that they will then eventually going to become, right?
I
um,
love that. Yep. Yep.
and then for, I guess, those who just get out of the college, right? What do I do now? Like, what
Yeah.
do I need to do to figure out my personal brand? We can come back to those questions as well, because it relates to everybody, right?
Hmm.
The two questions about like, what do you stand for and what are you against, is not only applied for leaders, it applies for
Yep.
everybody.
Yep.
And these days, when you buy something, whether it's from Apple, or you buy things from either Nordstrom or whatever, it become part of your identity, because you know that, hey, if I buy something, if I follow a certain brand, it says something about me. So the values that the brands that you follow or buy from hold a very specific values, and you sometimes feel that that's part of my identity, because I'm the girl who buy X, Y, and Z brand, right? Or
Hmm.
I am the person who support X, Y, and Z brand, because they, really are big in sustainability or whatnot. So
Right.
you can almost, become so attached to these different brands, and you can leverage that as part of your identity. So perhaps think about, what are some of the brands that you typically follow or purchase, and why do you do that? Is it because of sustainability? Is it because of, women's right? Or maybe it's because something else, right? You'll start seeing some of these different, traits that, oh, apparently I'm really big into supporting maybe people with disability, or gain more access for accessibility. I don't know, right? There's just so many million things that you could be either part of, either it's a movement, or values and different traits. And you can start like collecting all of those and define, like, is this really me? Do people see me as this, right? If
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
then you have a lot more work to do, in terms of like, let's start sharing some of your thoughts around this. What are your thoughts when it comes to, brands who doesn't really care about sustainable products, right? So you can start sharing all of these, and maybe even input some of your vision of what the solution might be, so people can start seeing this and notice, like, oh, this person is really big into sustainability. They'll might
Hmm.
connect you with companies who are looking for more solution in this space, or maybe even, invite you in the future for a panel speaker. You never know some of these different, opportunities that will come in, to be presented in front of you when you start showing up as your true self. So I think, coming down to just kind of recap everything that we have talked about today, there's a lot of ways for you to figure out your personal brand, but really start from your own your own interests, right? Your own values, as well as what it is that you feel is important for you. And then start projecting those into, well, your space, whether it's online or offline, maybe in person events or in your own community, and start being known as that person who may be really passionate about X, Y, and Z things.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I want to add one thing that we talk about women empowerment and sustainability as good examples because those are important causes, but it doesn't mean that you have to have like this huge cause,
Mm-hmm.
right? It can you can brand yourself around. For instance, I talked to someone yesterday. She's passionate about two things: fashion and fitness. That gives her not only a career, but also very much a personal branding thing because she is in a fashion industry, but being such a fitness person automatically gets her onto people's minds when it's about either fitness wear, but also the combination of being
Mm-hmm.
fashionable while constantly working out and being in leggings all the time. So I just wanted to give that example to say it doesn't always have to be like the huge I'm saving the world cause. It's just something that really matters to you. So
Yes.
thank you for that. Um, and you mentioned bring the true self, bringing out the true self. Now we've been hearing a lot about bringing your whole self to work and those things more recently, and I am wondering. Uh, a lot of people struggle with the idea of having kind of a public persona
Mm.
versus true self. What's your take on that? It's a very nuanced field, the
Yeah.
authenticity discussion. I would just yeah like to hear how you as
Yeah.
a branding expert
Oh, that's a
see
good
that.
question. You know, I was just at an event yesterday and I have a booth, right? I was exhibiting for my business yesterday, and I can't help but remember how I present myself yesterday in front of people as they come
Mm,
into the booth, start asking questions and things like that, right? What I notice is that when there's nobody at the event, right, I was just like checking my email and just like being quiet and all that kind of stuff. But when things started, I become this person who really just like open to talk to whoever who is interested. So I
mhm.
felt like if it comes okay, if we kind of look back in terms of like your own personality, right? I'm an ambivert and I didn't even know it was a thing until I realized, I actually like my own space, but I
Mm,
also do love like talking to people, and that really energized me. So understanding in terms of like what is your personality, right? When we don't understand like who we are, and even more so our own personality, it can
yeah,
get a little bit confusing in terms of like how should I behave, how do I show up, right? How do I really show my true self and behave the way I needed to. Now this kind of brings me back in terms of how I would typically show up, and how
mhm,
in different situation how I show up as my true self. I'm going to tell you that sometimes I can be very quiet, and that is
mhm,
okay. I have
yeah,
figured out that it's it's not going to be a big deal if I don't talk to everybody, right? For me, I think it was
right,
not about the number. It was about like whoever I can have quality conversation with, and that really counts as a big success for me everywhere I go, right?
right,
But when you have it in your mind that, oh, you have to be in a certain dress a certain way that maybe contradict of how you feel, or maybe you have to like really putting up a smile that you actually don't want to be in the
mhm,
place, right? Let's just say something along those lines. That is an example of not showing up as your true self, right? If you don't
yeah,
like going
yeah,
to networking events, then don't go. There's a lot of other places or ways you can really show up to the world, right? This, for example, is another way to do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So I think embodying what it is that feel the most comfortable to you, and you truly feel that this feels good, right? When you show up as yourself, whether it's at an event or online or whatever that is that you're doing, if it feels good, then you know that you're showing up as your true self. But if it start
yeah,
feeling like, I'm not enjoying myself here. It's like I'm asking why am I even here? Then you know like that's not for you. You got to find a space where it truly feels, right for you.
I absolutely love that because that, and I'm telling you, if you are like, oh God, I wish it were that easy, it is getting easier over
Mhm.
time. If you really listen for what your guidance is on that.
Yes.
Like I like that fact of realizing, okay, I need the input from people, but I also need a lot of me time. That resonates with
Mhm.
me because I am an off the chart extrovert, but I also have ADHD, so I need a lot of time to calm my brain down again.
Yeah.
So that is just, and that means I often am signed up for networking events, and I'm super excited to meet all these people. But on the day I can't go
Yeah.
because I cannot have further input in my brain that's already
Mm.
in overdrive. So
Yeah.
that happens, and then I'll just have to say no.
Yes.
And those are things you learn about yourself,
Mhm.
and that makes it easier every time you really make a decision that really is true to who you are.
Mhm.
It makes it a tiny little bit easier. And over the years, you see it better than, of course,
Yes.
in that moment. And I feel that just because you're not in the same box every time when
Mhm.
people see you, that
Mhm.
doesn't mean you're not authentic, right?
Ooh, yes. I love when you bring that up, especially trying to fit in a box. We're in, the age where it's not okay to be being fit in a box, right? Don't have to
Yes.
be put into a
Yes.
mold or a box. That's
Yeah.
not how we do things anymore. And
Right.
I would encourage, everybody who maybe haven't really taken a personality test, go take a
Mm.
personality test. It gives you such insights about like who you are, things that you may have been already doing, but you don't realize like, oh, apparently I've been doing this because I'm categorized as X. Or Mika, you mentioned earlier that you do have ADHD. The more you know about yourself, the
Yeah.
more it makes more sense for you because then you start to put the pieces together. It's like, oh, that's why I did the way I did things, right? Oh, that's why I love doing X, Y, and Z instead of
Yeah.
this. So, really invest in yourself, trying to figure out like who you are. And beyond that, like understanding your personality, like things that you have in your brain, in your body, whatever it is, to really gain some information on how can you move forward with what you have, because everybody
Right.
is different, everybody is unique. You have your own strengths and weaknesses, right? Lean into your strength and admit that you have these weaknesses and be okay with it, because you're not
Yeah.
perfect, I'm not perfect, nobody is, right? And we all continuously learning all the time. So yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. I love that. And I also, on a side note, diagnosis matter
Mm-hmm.
because that helps giving yourself, if there's something going on that might justify a diagnosis, it might help you just by giving yourself permission
Yes.
then to lean into it and say, this is part of who I am. This is not
Mm-hmm.
defining everything I am. It's like of
Yeah.
course my left leg is not all of me. It's just part of me. And that's the
Yeah.
same for ADHD, but it explains a lot. And
Yeah.
it helps me to know that. And same with we tend to lean very much into our weaknesses and say, oh, I have to get better at that. It helps to really refocus on the strengths because I actually
Mhm.
have a little note usually fell from it's usually on my computer, but not
Yeah.
sailed off the desk. Otherwise, I would show it. It says I don't do details. That's kind of my big permission slip. Of course, I have to do
Mhm.
details every once in a while,
Yeah.
but I have this as a reminder that whatever is very detailed and I
Mhm.
can get rid of it, I will.
Yeah.
And those things help because that
Yeah.
allows me, details will never be my strength. And if I lean in, I'll just
Yeah.
be mediocre at it instead of really bad.
Yeah.
Nobody needs another mediocre something or other because
Exactly.
you have, all right, you have strengths, so lean into
Yeah.
those.
Yeah.
And another thing, because you said tests, one thing I really love is the Enneagram.
Okay.
That's one I love because it really goes. for what motivates you. Mine is fun.
Oh,
And
nice.
that's a tough one when you grow up in a specialist
Yeah.
culture where everything is about career.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps me to know that because, yes, if I can make something fun, I'll stick with it. I'll fully focus like
Yeah.
everybody else, right? Or like the strength finder, those things can be very helpful if you are willing to acknowledge that this is not set in stone, I feel.
Mm-hmm. It will continuously evolve as you grow,
Yeah.
as you learn, right? So I
Yeah.
think it definitely worth to, if you haven't take it, right? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
reassess it, take it again maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, because you
Yeah.
are growing as a new person every day, in my opinion, right? The test
Yeah.
that you have today may not always going to be exactly, represent your own skill in the next 5 years, right? It's going to change, it's going to
Exactly.
evolve. So just know that this is not absolute, right? This
Yeah.
is not a death sentence. This is something that you are continuously going to, evolve and grow with.
Yep, yep. It's actually funny because I talked to someone a couple of months ago on this LinkedIn Live, Lisa, and she uses the Gallup Strength Finder a
Oh, I did
lot
that
with her
too. Yeah.
clients, right? And so I did it again because I knew we were talking about it, and then I found an older one, like 8 years ago, from 8 years ago, and two
Interesting.
or three of the five things were still the same, but they
Yeah.
had they had changed in priority, and the other half was new. So it was really interesting. It really made sense in the development,
Mm-hmm.
and also, I mean, when you have big life changes,
Yes.
uh, that might just uh, impact it even more. So just
Mm-hmm.
going from Germany to the US 10 years ago helped me a lot to step into what comes more natural to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of a different person, I feel, when I go back home.
Yes, I feel like everybody who
Mm.
has gone this into, has gone through a journey of either a life-changing moment, or, you
Yeah,
took a big risk, right? And you learn how to really figure out, like, what do I need to do next? It changed who you are, your perspective, as well as how you see everything, the world, your community, your environment, yourself, right? And I feel so related to you about that because I too, came from a terrible country. I left Bali 12 years ago to come here to just really learn as much as I
hmm
can. And the amount of resources that I have absorbed in the past 12 years, I don't think I would be the person who I am today if I were still, living in Bali, right? Because
yeah,
it
yeah,
really did change me in terms of like my mindset. Things that I used to believe was true is it's no longer true. And then
hmm
the way you see in the world, the way you see how, you could help others, how you bring value to others, and also how you appreciate yourself and making
yeah,
sure that you can put yourself first as well on, different occasions, especially if you're a mom, you know what I'm talking about, right? You need some time for yourself.
yeah.
um but yes, completely 100% agree with you.
I love that. I love that. So now I would like to tell our audience two things. First of all, you work really with femtech entrepreneurs. So how do you help them? How they can get in touch with you? And I also know that you can help on a larger scale with personal branding. I see your book in the background. So tell us all about that.
Yeah. So in the femtech space specifically, a lot of time we work with femtech entrepreneurs who has direct to consumer model of business, right? Or they have either a direct to consumer as well as a platform for the web. So we do all things related to the web. Oftentimes, people would come to us really asking, hey, how can we really define our digital experiences from the branding side of it, from the user experience, and then all the way to implementing that on said, yeah, said platform, be it e-commerce website. Maybe you want to
Mhm.
create a scalable e-commerce, or you're actually looking for high performing web marketing websites, right? We have some of those clients as well. And then some occasions, people would come to us really looking to build an MVP version of their product. So oftentimes it becomes a web application. Maybe you're creating some sort of like platforms like, learning management system, community, website, or something else in between, or even sometimes product finder too, right? So
Yeah.
I felt like there's so many things around the web that we typically do in this particular space and industry. It can varies from different client to another, but everything's still related towards all things the web. So from strategy, designing it, developing, as well as post launching, we support that all the way to the growth.
Hmm. Cool. So, and if you're not a femtech entrepreneur, but you want to
Yeah.
learn more about websites and branding and personal branding,
Yeah.
where should people find you, or where should they start?
Well, they can always connect with me, right?
Mhm.
Um, Even though we primarily work with women-led brands in B2B tech as well as femtech, direct to consumer, we sometimes come across different types of organization, right? Coming back to the personal values and the brand values that we hold here at Chykalophia, it all comes down to, are we a good fit for you in terms of
Mhm.
values, or are we not, right? I have had memories and horrible experience in the past working with clients who don't really have the same value like we did,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was a nightmare. I do not want to repeat that ever again. So
Yes. Yes. Good
for
for
us,
you.
yes, and you know how this feels because it just feels so good when you work with the right people, right? With the right,
Yeah.
team who understand your values, and it becomes such a collaborative effort, regardless of the industry. So sometimes we work with other industries, again, assuming that our values are aligned.
Yeah. And you wrote a book.
Yes,
So
I did.
tell us
Right
who that.
there.
Yeah, yeah, that's so amazing. It takes so long.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a, yeah, book baby is a thing, right? It takes so long. Um, who is that book for? What are you teaching people in that book, or who are you connecting with through
Good
that book?
question, Mika. Oh man. All right. So the book Made to Sell, right? That one is specially designed for those who are trying to figure out like, okay, what do I do with my website?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, marketing directors or even, other entrepreneurs will come to us like, I don't know what to do with my website. I don't even
Mm-hmm.
know where to begin. And most of the time they would just like dump everything into their website and hope that it works. It's like that's not how you build a website, especially ones that will truly support your journey as an entrepreneur. You're hitting your business goals and all that different things. You want to have a very strategic, plan in terms of like how you're going to tackle it. So the book is designed for either founders who are trying to figure out how to get moving on their brand into the web platform. Maybe you're building an e-commerce or web application and marketing website, or for a marketing director who has have gone through so many different types of project before on the web, but not knowing it's like, how do I really honing in on a web project, right? You need the
Yeah.
inside knowledge. Sometimes I feel like marketing directors will come to us, okay, you guys help me figure out because I have no idea what to do. And the book is really going to, guide you through and through from like, how do you, set the foundational goals, right? What is this website going to be all about? Who are the people that you will need in your team so that you can keep a lookout in terms of building the right people to support your project? And then how do we really translate the brand into the digital experiences? We have all of those in there, and all the way in terms of like some technical, information there. Not too much so that we don't bore you with
Mm-hmm.
all things technical, because honestly, technology sometimes doesn't matter. What matter is your intention for the project,
Yep.
your goals, and then the plans that you really want to tackle to bring it to life.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds super interesting. It's going on my reading list for sure. Um, and yeah, so that's all the time we have. Ari, thank you for being here today. That was so valuable. I'll share the replay with everybody, and I'm sure that people will learn a lot by just listening to what you have to say about personal branding, and also expressing it on the web. And reach out to Ari if you have more questions. She's happy to answer. And this is actually the last episode for this season of Go Big with Mika. I will come back with the interview series in fall. Not sure exactly when, but just ring the bell on my profile and you will not miss the updates. And I have a surprise coming. I'm doing a limited LinkedIn audio series with a dear colleague of mine over the summer, which is again focused around being the only woman in the room. One of my favorite topics to talk about, and hopefully we don't have to talk about it much longer. That's the purpose behind it. All right. Thank you again, Ari, and everybody have a great rest of your week. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye, Mika.